Hi there. So in this lesson, I want to talk about an error that comes up a lot in working with Java and Greenfoot. I'm going to hit compile, and it says here, reached end of file while parsing. And as you may or may not know, when you get an error like this, you can always get more information by going over to the question mark button and clicking on that. So I'm going to click on that. And it's sometimes you'll get more information, sometimes they don't have any. But here it says reached end of file while parsing. This means that you have opened a block using an open brace, but not closed it with a closing brace. You might either have a opening brace where you don't need one, or you have left out a closing brace where you do need one. So let's talk about what blocks are and what these braces have to do with them. Let's see here. Okay, so we're going to talk about blocks. And we're going to talk about blocks for classes, methods, and if statements. There are other blocks that you'll run into at some point, but these are the main ones we're going to talk about in this lesson. So you'll notice when you're looking at your files, when you create when you go to edit a Java file, you'll see all these different colors. There's some a green rectangle around the outside and yellow ones, and you might see purple ones, and then there's these little white bits in between too. So those are all blocks, and the way to think about them is that blocks contain other blocks. So a block is like maybe like a box too, you could think of it, that holds other things inside of it. So the big green block out here holds inside of it these yellow blocks, right? And this yellow block has a purple block inside of it, and there's a white block inside of that. And this yellow one has a white block, okay? And then there's white space in between these yellow blocks too. So let's see what that's about. So the main block that you have in your Java program, in your class definition, is your class block. Okay, and that's the great big green rectangle. So all your programs should have some green at the top and around the side and some green at the bottom, because everything else goes inside the class. Okay, so everything in your program belongs to the class, so everything should be inside that green class block. So an important part of defining the block is defined in a few different ways, but one of the important pieces of the block are these braces. So you need to, for every block, this goes for class blocks and method blocks and if blocks, all these blocks need these braces at the front and the braces at the back. And you see these, they're opening braces and closing braces, okay? The opening braces have that little tip that points to the left, and the closing brace has that little tip at the end that points to the right, okay? So everything inside these braces belongs to the block. And you'll notice above the brace, I have a little bit of space here. I'll show you what that's about. So for classes, what goes up here is a class header, okay? And again, every block has something up above it that explains what kind of block it is. So here we're saying this is a class. Right here, this keyword class tells you that this block is a class block, okay? So the basic parts of the block are the header. It has different names depending on the block, but there's this top part of the block, kind of the heading that explains what the block is. And then there's the braces, the opening braces and the closing braces. And then there's all the stuff that's inside the block. Sometimes that's called the body of the block. Okay, so it has like a head and a body, and the body is in between these two braces. Okay. Okay, so this is the class block, right? Then next we're going to talk about the method blocks. So the method blocks are the yellow rectangles that are inside the green. So you can see how this class block goes all the way around, and the yellow blocks are the method blocks inside. So that's where you're going to define your methods, the things that your program does, the actions that your program knows how to do. Okay, so again, just like we had to have braces for the class block, we have to have braces for the method block. So there's an opening and a closing one for this method, and there's an opening brace and a closing brace for this method, and an opening and closing brace for that method. Okay, and just like we needed to have a class header, we have this little heading piece up on top of the methods. We call them signatures. Okay, so this is the signature of the method. So this tells you what tells you something about the method. So this method. So these are all void methods. And we talked about void and non-void methods earlier, but the point here is that there's this header that tells you what kind of method, and notice there's the parentheses, right? And if there were any parameters in these methods, the parameters would go in there. But we have the signature that tells you what kind of method it is, and then we have the opening and the closing braces. And they're all inside the yellow rectangle. Okay. So a complete class definition would have to have the class header, and then the opening brace and the closing brace for the class, and then the method definitions. And the method definitions have the signatures and the opening and closing braces for the methods. Okay, so the class is the green piece, and then the green rectangle, and then inside the rectangle there are three methods, which we can see from the three yellow rectangles. Okay, then we have if blocks. So inside our methods we can have these purple rectangles, and you can have a number of purple rectangles inside the same method, or you can have, different ones. But the purple rectangles, the if blocks, are always inside the yellow blocks. You'll never see a purple block, or something's wrong if the purple block seems like it's directly inside the green box. So it should be the green block going around everything, and then the yellow blocks, and the yellow blocks may have purple blocks inside of them for the if blocks. Again, for every block you need your opening brace and your closing brace, and the opening brace has the little tip that points to the left, and the closing brace has the little tip that points to the right. Okay, so everything that goes inside those braces, that's the body of the if block. Okay. And then above the if block, again, there's this little header piece that tells us what kind of block it is. For the if block, we have the if keyword and some kind of condition. And the condition is the piece that's inside the parentheses. So for this example, here's the if keyword, and then inside parentheses we have the condition at world edge, which is a method call. So that's going to tell us something true or false, and then if it's true, we're going to do what's inside the if block, what's inside those opening braces and closing braces. Okay, so here's what it looks like when you have blocks within blocks. Okay, so we have our if block, that if at world edge block, and then that's inside the act method, and the act method is one of the 3 methods that's inside the turtle class. Okay. Okay, and then finally we want to talk about statements. So this is kind of the background picture that we saw at the beginning with the white strips. You notice there are white strips in between the methods. Nothing really goes there. That's just space so that we can separate our methods when we're inside the class. But there's also this white strip inside the if block, and there's these white strips inside these methods. That's where statements go. So let's take a look at that. So statements are your method calls. Okay, so that's where you actually make things happen. And remember, a method call has a opening and closing parentheses and a semicolon after it. Okay, and there are other kinds of statements too, but the important thing to remember about statements is that they end with semicolons, and they go inside of some kind of a block. So for this lesson, they'll be either inside a method block or inside an if block. And the if block, remember, also has to be inside a method block. So the purple block there is inside the yellow block. And here is a class definition that works. So the class definition that we saw before, let me just back this up a little bit. So this one right here, oh, actually, not this one. This one right here, this is a class definition. This will compile fine, but it doesn't do anything. So if you call act, nothing will happen because there are no statements in there to make anything happen. Or if you call move, you won't get an error, but just nothing will happen, or turn left. But once we put the statements in, now when if we are at world edge, we will turn 13. Once we call the act method, right? Every time we call the act method, if we're at the world edge, we'll turn 13. Every time we call the move method, we'll move forward 4. Every time we call the turn left method, we'll turn 90 degrees, minus 90 degrees, which will make us turn to the left. Okay? So that's the basic idea of blocks.